Imagine a weapon so silent it could kill from 300 feet away without a sound. Yet modern special forces still study its design today. Sounds like science fiction, right? But this weapon was perfected over 40,000 years ago by hunters who had no choice but to be perfect, because one mistake meant starvation, or worse, becoming the prey themselves. But the world of ancient hunting holds far more than primitive spears and crude arrows. These weren't just tools. They were masterpieces of engineering, born from desperation and refined through generations of life and death trials. Some were so effective they drove entire species to extinction. Others were so ingenious that archaeologists still can't fully explain how they worked. And a few were so deadly that the civilizations who mastered them rose to dominate continents. Picture this. Weapons carved from bone that could pierce mammoth hide like butter. Throwing sticks engineered with aerodynamics that wouldn't be understood for another 30,000 years. Blades fashioned from volcanic glass sharper than modern surgical scalpels. So sharp that one hunter reportedly killed a full-grown bison with a single throw. Today, we'll uncover the 5 most devastatingly effective ancient hunting weapons ever created, each one more ingenious than the last. And the first one? It changed warfare forever, but it started as a simple tool for putting dinner on the table. Weapon 5, the obsidian blade. Our journey begins not with metal, not with bronze or iron, but with stone. Volcanic stone. And not just any volcanic stone. Obsidian, nature's scalpel, forged in the explosive heart of volcanoes and cooled so rapidly that it formed edges sharper than anything humans would create for the next 10,000 years. Here's what most people don't know. When obsidian fractures, it creates an edge just 3 nanometers thick. To put that in perspective, that's 100 times sharper than a modern steel surgical blade. Surgeons today, right now, in 2025, still use obsidian scalpels for delicate procedures because they cause less tissue damage than steel. But here's where it gets interesting. Ancient Mesoamerican hunters didn't just stumble upon this material. They mastered it. They developed a technique called pressure flaking, a method so precise, so calculated, that modern knappers need years of training to replicate even basic obsidian tools. These weren't cavemen randomly smashing rocks. These were artisans, engineers, scientists working with materials that demanded absolute perfection. Picture a Mayan hunter in the dense jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula 3,000 years ago. Dawn breaks through the canopy. He's tracking a white-tailed deer for 3 hours, moving like a ghost through the undergrowth. In his hand, an obsidian blade mounted on a wooden shaft, barely heavier than a feather but deadly enough to slice through hide, muscle, and bone in a single motion. The deer stops to drink. One throw. The blade enters the animal's neck so cleanly that the deer doesn't even startle immediately. It's over in seconds. No suffering. Just efficiency born from necessity. But obsidian had a dark side that made it even more terrifying. See, obsidian doesn't just cut clean. When it enters flesh, microscopic fragments can break off, fragments so small, so sharp, that they continue cutting at the cellular level. Ancient hunters knew this. They weaponized it. A wound from an obsidian blade wasn't just a cut. It was a guarantee that even if the prey escaped, infection would track it down. The Aztecs took this further than anyone. They created the macuahuitl, a wooden club embedded with obsidian blades along both edges. Spanish conquistadors reported in horror that these weapons could decapitate a horse in a single swing. A horse. One swing. Think about the force, the precision, the absolute mastery of material science required to create something like that. But here's the question that kept me up at night researching this. If obsidian was so effective, so abundant in volcanic regions, why didn't it spread everywhere? Why didn't every ancient culture adopt it? The answer reveals something crucial about ancient weapon design. Obsidian is brittle. Drop it wrong and it shatters. Hit bone at the wrong angle and your blade becomes dust. It demands perfection from the wielder. There's no margin for error, no room for a sloppy throw or a missed strike. It was a weapon that required absolute mastery, and that meant years of training, generations of knowledge passed down, and a culture that could afford to invest in such specialization. Only societies with sufficient resources, with enough stability to train expert hunters, could truly exploit obsidian's potential. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a marker of civilization, a sign that your culture had moved beyond mere survival into something more sophisticated. And that sophistication? It meant these hunters could take down prey other cultures couldn't even approach. Jaguars, peccaries, even the occasional crocodile. The obsidian blade turned humans from opportunistic scavengers into apex predators. But as deadly as obsidian was, it had one fatal flaw: range. You had to get close. Dangerously close. Close enough to smell your prey. Close enough to see the life drain from its eyes. For thousands of years, hunters dreamed of a weapon that could kill from a distance, that could bring down prey before it even knew death was coming. And then, somewhere in the African savannah, someone looked at a bent piece of wood and had an idea that would change human history forever. Weapon 4, the composite bow. Most people think the bow is ancient. They're wrong. The simple asterisk bow is ancient. A curved stick with a string, tension, and release, basic physics. But what we're talking about is something else entirely. Something that took the simple bow and turned it into an instrument of impossible power. The composite bow. 3 materials, wood, horn, and sinew, laminated together in a specific arrangement that created a weapon so powerful, so revolutionary, that civilizations rose and fell based on who possessed it. Here's the mind-blowing part. A simple wooden bow might have a draw weight of 50 pounds. Respectable. Enough to kill a deer at close range. But a composite bow? 160 pounds. Some samples recovered from Central Asian tombs exceeded 180 pounds of draw weight. That's not just an incremental improvement. That's a weapon operating in an entirely different physics category. But the genius wasn't just in power. It was in efficiency. See, wood wants to bend. Horn wants to compress. Sinew wants to stretch. Ancient bowyers, and we're talking about craftsmen working 4,000 years ago in the steppes of Central Asia, figured out that if you laminated these materials in the right order, you could exploit each material's natural properties simultaneously. The belly of the bow was horn, which compressed like a steel spring. The back was sinew, which stretched like elastic. The core was wood, providing structure and stability. The result? A bow that could be shorter, sometimes just 3 feet long, while delivering the power of a 6-foot longbow. For a hunter on horseback, this was game-changing. Literally. Imagine a Mongolian hunter, 2,500 years ago, on the endless grasslands that stretch from China to Europe. His tracking Saiga antelope, fast, alert, nearly impossible to approach on foot. But he's not on foot. He's mounted on a steppe pony, moving at full gallop, the wind screaming past his ears. The antelope bolt, hitting speeds of 50 miles per hour. No problem. The hunter doesn't even slow down. He rises in his stirrups, draws his composite bow, a motion so practiced it's become unconscious, and releases. The arrow flies 250 yards and drops an antelope mid-stride. The entire herd scatters, but our hunter is already targeting a second kill. Draw. Release. Another perfect shot. 2 kills in under a minute, from horseback, at full gallop, at distances that would make modern rifle hunters pause. But here's what archaeologists discovered that sent chills down my spine. When they analyzed ancient composite bows preserved in desert tombs, they found something unexpected. These bows weren't symmetric. The limbs were slightly asymmetric, intentionally asymmetric, to account for the fact that mounted archers primarily shot to the left side of their horses. The bowyers had calculated the physics of shooting from a moving platform and engineered compensation directly into the weapon design. This is 2000 BCE. These people hadn't discovered written mathematics yet, but they were applying complex physics and materials engineering that wouldn't be formally understood for another 3,000 years. The construction process was equally insane. A master bowyer could spend an entire year crafting a single composite bow. The horn had to be harvested at exactly the right time of year, spring, when water buffalo shed their horns naturally. The sinew had to come from the backs of deer or cattle, dried and pounded into fibrous strips. The wood, usually bamboo, maple, or mulberry, had to be seasoned for months. Then came the lamination. Thin layers glued with hide glue, wrapped tightly, left to cure for weeks. Then shaped, tillered, adjusted. The bow was essentially grown into its final form through months of patient work. And if you messed up any single step, the entire bow could explode when drawn, sending splinters into your face, possibly blinding you or worse. But when it worked, when a master craftsman created a perfect composite bow, you held in your hands a weapon that could penetrate armor at 100 yards, kill a man at 300 yards, and wound at distances approaching 500 yards. The Mongols used these bows to build the largest land empire in human history. The Parthians used them to devastate Roman legions. The Scythians used them to dominate the Eurasian steppes for nearly 1,000 years. Yet here's the haunting question. With all this power, all this range, all this technological sophistication, why did hunters eventually abandon the composite bow? The answer is maintenance. In humid climates, the glue dissolved. The horn absorbed moisture and lost its compression properties. The sinew rotted. A weapon that took a year to make could be destroyed by a single week of rain. It was the ultimate high-risk, high-reward weapon, devastating in the right hands and the right environment, but demanding constant care and perfect conditions. Hunters needed something more reliable. Something that didn't require a master craftsman to maintain. Something that could work in any environment, any weather, any situation. They needed a weapon that was fundamentally foolproof. And they found it in a tool so simple, so elegant, that humans had been using variations of it for over 60,000 years, but had never quite perfected it until one culture, in one specific place, turned it into an instrument of surgical precision. Weapon 3, the atlatl, spear thrower. Look at your arm. Now imagine extending it by 2 feet. Instantly, with no additional muscle required. That's the atlatl. It sounds simple, almost primitive. A stick with a notch. But what it represented was humanity's first mechanical multiplier. The first time we used leverage and physics to exceed our biological limitations. Here's what blew my mind when I first learned about this. The atlatl doesn't just throw a spear farther. It throws it faster than a human arm can physically move. Tests with modern replicas show that an atlatl can accelerate a dart to speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. Some experts estimate that master hunters could hit 150 miles per hour with specialized competition atlatls. That's faster than the legal speed limit on most highways. And we're talking about a weapon perfected 30,000 years ago. But speed is only part of the story. The real genius is in the asterisk mechanics asterisk. The atlatl works through leverage multiplication. By extending the length of your throwing arm by 20 to 30 inches, you dramatically increase the arc through which the projectile accelerates. It's the same physics that makes a whip crack. The energy transfers down a tapering length, accelerating progressively until it breaks the sound barrier at the tip. Ancient hunters understood this instinctively, even if they couldn't articulate the mathematics. They didn't need to. They could see the results. An atlatl could send a dart, essentially a long, thin spear, 200 yards with accuracy. That's twice the range of a thrown spear. And the dart hit with enough force to penetrate mammoth hide. Mammoth hide. Let me paint you a picture of what this meant in practice. You're a Clovis hunter, 13,000 years ago, on the Great Plains of North America. The ice sheets are still retreating, and the landscape is dominated by megafauna that dwarf anything alive today. You and your hunting party, maybe a dozen people total, have been tracking a young mammoth for 2 days. It's separated from its herd, injured, limping. Still, it weighs 4 tons and could crush any of you with a casual step. You can't get close. Even wounded, it's too dangerous. But you have your atlatl, your perfectly balanced darts tipped with Clovis points. Those distinctive fluted spear tips that are possibly the most beautiful stone tools ever created. Your group spreads out, surrounding the mammoth at a distance. One hunter throws. The dart flies in a flat arc, no rainbow trajectory like an arrow, just a laser-straight line of bone and stone. It strikes the mammoth's flank and penetrates deep. The mammoth trumpets in rage and pain, but before it can charge, 3 more darts hit home. Then 3 more. Within minutes, the mammoth is bristling with darts, bleeding from a dozen wounds, weakening. You never got closer than 50 yards. The animal that could have killed you all never had a chance to fight back. This was the atlatl's revolution. It turned humans into distance killers who could take down prey far larger than themselves without risking close combat. But here's where it gets really interesting, and where most historians get it wrong. The atlatl wasn't just a hunting weapon. It was a democratizing force. Unlike the composite bow, which required years of training and considerable strength, almost anyone could learn to use an atlatl effectively in weeks. A teenage hunter could throw just as far as a grown warrior. The physics did the work. The human just provided the initial energy. This meant entire communities could participate in hunts. Women, teenagers, older hunters who'd lost their strength. Everyone could contribute. Archaeological evidence from atlatl-using cultures shows more egalitarian social structures compared to bow-using cultures. The weapon literally changed social dynamics. And the applications went far beyond just hunting. The Aztecs used atlatls in warfare so effectively that Spanish conquistadors reported they were more feared than bows. Why? Because atlatl darts were heavy enough to penetrate Spanish armor at close range. An arrow might glance off a steel breastplate. An atlatl dart? It punched through. The Australian Aboriginal people developed their own version, the Woomera, and used it continuously for at least 40,000 years. 40,000 years. The pyramids are 4,500 years old. The Woomera is nearly 9 times older than the pyramids. Let that sink in. But before moving on, I would like to ask you for something. If you like these documentaries and want to support me, please consider subscribing. It's free. Now, you're probably wondering, if the atlatl was so effective, so democratic, so revolutionary, why did it eventually get replaced? The answer is consistency. An atlatl is affected by wind. The darts are long, sometimes 5 to 7 feet, and even a slight breeze can push them off target at range. They're also harder to carry in quantity. A hunter might carry 2 or 3 darts versus a dozen arrows. And in dense forest, the long darts are awkward, catching on branches and undergrowth. The atlatl ruled the open plains, the tundra, the grasslands. But as human populations grew and spread into forests, mountains, and jungles, hunters needed something more versatile. Something that could work in tight spaces. Something that could be carried in quantity and used from concealment. They needed a weapon that combined power with portability, that could kill silently from ambush, that could be drawn and fired from any position. And they found it in a weapon so ancient, so primal, that most people don't even realize it was once the most important tool in the human arsenal. Weapon 2, the throwing stick, boomerang. Stop. Before you roll your eyes and think, a stick? Really? Let me tell you what archaeologists found in a Polish cave in 1987 that changed everything we thought we knew about ancient weapons. A curved throwing stick, carved from mammoth ivory, 23,000 years old. And when they analyzed the aerodynamics, it was perfect. Mathematically, aerodynamically perfect. The curves, the weight distribution, the cross-section, everything optimized for maximum range and accuracy. This wasn't a stick. This was aerospace engineering carved by people who supposedly hadn't even invented agriculture yet. Here's what most people don't understand. The boomerang that returns to you? That's a toy. A training tool. The real boomerang, the hunting boomerang, doesn't come back. It doesn't need to. Because when it hits, the prey is dead, and you walk over and pick it up from the corpse. Hunting boomerangs, which archaeologists call killer sticks or hunting kailis, were designed with one purpose: to transfer maximum kinetic energy into a target at range while maintaining stable flight. And ancient hunters achieved this through obsessive refinement over literally tens of thousands of years. Tests with modern replicas show effective ranges of 200 yards. Some expert throwers have hit targets at 300 yards. That's 3 football fields. With a curved piece of wood. Thrown by hand. But range is just the beginning. The real genius is in the asterisk rotation asterisk. When you throw a boomerang correctly, it rotates around its center of mass at incredibly high speeds, sometimes exceeding 200 RPM. This rotation creates gyroscopic stability, the same physics that keeps a bicycle upright when moving. The boomerang literally flies like a tiny helicopter, maintaining its orientation through the air and cutting through wind that would deflect any other thrown weapon. Now imagine this in action. Australian Aboriginal hunters, 15,000 years ago, on the arid plains of the outback. You're tracking kangaroos in the pre-dawn light. They're grazing in the open, alert but not panicked. You can't get close. Kangaroos can hop at 35 miles per hour and maintain that speed for miles. A spear? Useless. An arrow? You'd get one shot before they scattered beyond range. But you have 3 boomerangs hooked in your belt. You position yourself upwind, behind a low rise. You select your target, a large male, maybe 150 pounds of meat. You stand, and the kangaroo's heads snap up. They're already tensing to flee. You throw. The boomerang leaves your hand spinning so fast it's almost invisible. A blur of wood and physics. It flies in a flat arc. Unlike a spear or arrow, there's almost no drop. The rotation keeps it stable through 120 yards of flight. And then it connects. The impact sounds like a gunshot echoing across the plains. The kangaroo drops instantly, its skull fractured. The rest of the mob scatters. But you're already throwing your second boomerang. Another hit. 2 kills in under 10 seconds, from 100 plus yards, from a standing position. This is why Aboriginal Australians considered boomerang hunting an art form worthy of lifetime mastery. But here's what kept me awake researching this. The boomerang wasn't just Australian. Archaeologists have found throwing sticks from ancient Egypt. King Tutankhamun was buried with an entire collection of them. The ancient Hopi people of North America used rabbit sticks that functioned on identical principles. Polish cave dwellers 23,000 years ago. Arizona hunters 2,000 years ago. Egyptian pharaohs 3,300 years ago. India, Africa, Europe, Asia. This design appeared independently in dozens of cultures across every inhabited continent. That's not coincidence. That's convergent evolution of technology. This design is so fundamentally effective that humans keep rediscovering it. And when you analyze the physics, you understand why. The boomerang solves problems that took modern engineers centuries to figure out. Stable flight without fins or feathers. Gyroscopic rotation. Maximum energy transfer on impact. Hardwood construction with specific cross-sections. Accuracy at range despite wind. Aerodynamic shaping that creates lift and drag in precise ratios. But here's the haunting part. In the 1960s, anthropologists studied the last traditional Aboriginal hunters who still used boomerangs daily. They documented throwing techniques passed down through 50,000 years of continuous use. The hunters could throw from any position. Standing, sitting, kneeling, even lying down. They could curve throws around obstacles. They could adjust for wind speed and direction instinctively, without conscious calculation. One elder, when asked how he aimed, said he didn't aim. He knew where the boomerang would go the same way you know where your hand will go when you reach for something. The weapon was an extension of his body, mapped into his nervous system through years of practice. That's the level of mastery ancient hunters achieved. Not just competence. Not just skill. Union with the weapon. The kind of mastery that makes impossible shots look effortless. And the applications extended beyond just hunting. Throwing sticks were used in warfare to break shield walls from a distance. They were used to hunt birds. The rotation of the boomerang created a wider strike zone, making it easier to hit fast, erratic flyers. Aboriginal hunters reportedly used them to knock fruit from high trees. One tool, dozens of applications, refined over 50,000 years of continuous use. So why did the boomerang fade from prominence? Why don't modern hunters use them? The answer is brutally simple. Guns. The boomerang requires incredible skill. Years of practice. Constant training. When firearms arrived, a complete novice could hit targets the first day with more power than the most skilled boomerang thrower. The gun democratized lethality in a way the boomerang never could. But before the gun, before even bronze or iron, there was one weapon that ruled all others. One tool that let early humans rise from scavengers to apex predators. A weapon so fundamental, so important, that scientists believe it literally changed our evolution. It made us human. Weapon 1. The spear. This is it. The weapon that made us. The tool that transformed us from prey into predators. The spear doesn't sound impressive, does it? A stick with a sharp end. How revolutionary could it be? Let me put this in perspective. We have evidence of spear use going back 500,000 years. 500,000 years. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, have only existed for about 300,000 years. That means the spear predates our species. Homo heidelbergensis was making spears. Homo erectus might have used them. The spear is older than modern human anatomy. But here's what archaeologists discovered that rewrote human evolution. In 2013, researchers found stone spear points in South Africa dating back 500,000 years. But the truly shocking discovery came when they analyzed where patterns on the points. These weren't thrusting spears. They were throwing spears. Humans, or proto-humans, were throwing spears with enough force to hunt from a distance 500,000 years ago. Think about what that means. Imagine your Homo heidelbergensis 500,000 years ago in Africa. You're smaller than modern humans, weaker, slower. The savannah is filled with animals that can outrun you, outfight you, out-everything you. Lions, hyenas, wild dogs. You're not at the top of the food chain. You're barely clinging to the middle. But you have something no other animal has. A throwing arm. And that changes everything. The human shoulder is unique in the animal kingdom. We have a ball and socket joint that allows 360-degree rotation and can generate tremendous rotational speed. Chimpanzees, our closest relatives, can't throw with force or accuracy. But humans? We can hurl a spear 100 feet with enough power to pierce elephant hide. This ability literally reshaped our evolution. Scientists now believe that the development of throwing spears drove natural selection for broader shoulders, longer forearms, and changes in brain structure to calculate trajectories and predict moving targets. The spear made us human. But the early spears were crude, fire-hardened wooden points, maybe tipped with basic stone flakes. Effective, sure, but nothing compared to what was coming. Fast forward to 75,000 years ago. East Africa. Humans have refined the spear into something approaching art. The stone points are now carefully shaped, symmetrical, beautiful. They are hafted to straight shafts with tree resin and wrapped with sinew. The spears are balanced, weighted properly, designed for specific prey. A hunting party tracks a Cape buffalo, one of the most dangerous animals in Africa, even today. The buffalo weighs 1,500 pounds, has horns that can gore a lion, and the temperament of a nightmare. Head-on, it would kill every hunter without breaking stride. But they don't go head-on. They use the spear's gift, distance. They spread out, encircling the buffalo at 80 feet. One hunter shows himself, drawing the buffalo's attention. It lowers its head, preparing to charge. That's when the other hunters strike. 6 spears launched simultaneously from different angles. The buffalo charges, but the spears have done their work. Deep penetration. Massive blood loss. The animal makes it 50 yards before its legs buckle. The hunters never got close enough to smell it. The spear gave them the ultimate advantage. They could kill without being killed. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Because the spear didn't just change how we hunted. It changed what we could hunt. Before the spear, humans were limited to scavenging and opportunistic hunting of small game. After the spear, mammoth, woolly rhinoceros, giant ground sloths, cave bears. We started taking down megafauna that individually weighed more than our entire hunting parties combined. Archaeological sites from the Ice Age show kill zones where humans drove mammoths into bogs or over cliffs and then finished them with spears. One site in Poland shows the remains of over 100 mammoths killed over several decades. That's not opportunistic scavenging. That's systematic, organized predation on an industrial scale. The spear turned us into the most dangerous predators the planet has ever seen. And the design kept evolving. By 25,000 years ago, humans had developed specialized spear points for different prey. Broad points for large animals, maximum cutting and blood loss. Narrow points for smaller game, deep penetration. Barbed points that couldn't be pulled out without tearing flesh. Specialized designs for fish, birds, mammals. The Clovis point, arguably the most sophisticated stone tool ever made, appeared in North America around 13,000 years ago. These points were fluted. They had a groove running partway up each face. Nobody's entirely sure why. Some think it helped with hafting. Others believe it reduced weight while maintaining strength. Still others think it improved aerodynamics. What we do know, Clovis points were so effective that the culture spread across the entire North American continent in less than 500 years. That's unprecedented in human prehistory. And within 1,000 years of their arrival, over 30 species of megafauna went extinct in North America. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, gone. Did the spear, and specifically the Clovis spear, cause these extinctions? It's controversial, but the timing is suspicious. And we know the spear was effective enough to hunt these animals. Whether we hunted them to extinction or just contributed to their demise during climate change. Either way, the spear was there at the end. But the spear's ultimate genius wasn't in any single design. It was in its versatility. Short spears for close combat. Long spears for reaching dangerous prey. Throwing spears for distance. Fishing spears with multiple points. Spears with detachable heads connected by ropes. Spears designed to be thrust, thrown, or used to set up traps. The spear was infinitely adaptable. Even when more advanced weapons appeared, the atlatl, the bow, the crossbow, the spear never disappeared. Roman legions conquered Europe with short thrusting spears. Macedonian phalanxes dominated with 18-foot-long sarissas. African hunters still use spears today in traditional hunts because they're reliable, repairable, and effective. The spear is the weapon that refused to become obsolete. And here's the final, mind-bending thought. Every single weapon we've discussed today, obsidian blades, composite bows, atlatls, boomerangs, and spears, was developed by people without written language, without formal mathematics, without metallurgy. They created these weapons through observation, experimentation, and thousands of years of accumulated knowledge passed down through oral tradition. They didn't have engineering degrees. They had survival. And survival is the ultimate teacher. These weapons weren't just tools for killing animals. They were the foundation of human civilization. They allowed us to survive ice ages. They enabled population growth. They freed up time for art, culture, and eventually agriculture. The hunt, and the weapons that made it possible, created the conditions for everything that followed. We don't hunt with spears anymore. Most of us will never need to hunt at all. But these weapons live on in our DNA, in our instincts, in the way our shoulders are built and our brains calculate trajectory. We are the descendants of hunters who mastered these tools. Their survival is why we exist. If you enjoyed this journey through ancient weaponry and want to see more deep dives into history's forgotten technologies, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.